All right, Mike from Prep Pros here. We're gonna run through test 6. This just was released a few days ago, so it's pretty interesting to see how this compares to test 5. Sounds like it also features some of the questions that were on the March 2024 digital SATs. All right. Whether Carmen Lomas Garza is creating small paintings and illustrations or large public artworks, such Bale, copper cutout of traditional Mexican dance in the San Francisco International Airport, she is blank direct experience, drawing from her memories of her childhood in Texas or details of her current surroundings in California. Well, this is telling us, right, this is kind of defining what we're putting in here, so this is going to have to be inspired by. None of these other ones make sense for showing drawing from something. Disproving the common misconception of native arts is blank. The painters whose work appears in the collection at the National Museum of the American Indian employ a range of styles, so I'm probably looking for something that's opposite of a range. There are artists working in the traditional arts of their specific tribal communities, artists working in the European modernist or American abstract impressionist art traditions, and artists blending various traditions into something wholly new. So the misconception has to be right against a range, and we're seeing all this variation, so we're looking for something that, not individualistic, but something that would be consistent with one thing. That would be homogeneous here. Recent measurements of the mass of the W boson were notable not only for the mere fact that the particle's mass differed from expectations, but for the blank of that difference. So this is going to be defining what we're looking at right here since it's after a colon. The measured mass of the W boson was 7 standard deviations higher than predicted by the standard model of particles physics. So we're talking about, right, this is a huge difference. So it's going to have to be scale there. Birds sing to communicate over potentially great distances. For this reason, many researchers believe that birds in densely vegetated habitats generally sing at lower frequencies than birds living in comparatively sparse habitats, since dense vegetation tends to blank the distance that high-frequency sounds can travel. I'll take a read back through this one. I feel like I missed something. Birds sing to communicate over potentially great distances. For this reason, many researchers believe that birds in densely habitats sing at lower frequencies than birds living in comparatively sparse, since vegetation has to... Oh, okay. So they're singing in low frequency against high frequency. I missed that on my first read. So this would have to be something like negative about the frequency, making it harder to hear, so diminish would make sense here. We'll just jump up to the grammar questions here. All right. A harpsichord may look just like a piano, but the difference between the two instruments is easy to hear. When a harpsichord keys are pressed, the strings inside the instrument are plucked, not struck. We don't need any punctuation here. This is just smack in the middle of one independent clause. Also, no difference between A and C here, single, dash, and colon. Comma doesn't make any sense here. Odd one out trick again. It's an example of anti-timitable, or however we saw that, a writing technique that, I looked at this completely wrong. This is my odd one out. They create, they are creating, they have created. I don't know what my brain was doing there. Singular, this is our only singular conjugation. So it's a writing technique that creates is the only one that makes sense there. I don't know what my brain was doing there for a second. So technologies such as microphones and inkjet printers are made using piezo. I'll go back to this because I don't have a ton of time here. This is a super common question type, subject-verb agreement. They create, they are creating, they have created are all plural conjugations. He or she creates is singular. The odd one out pretty much always gives away the right answer for these. So you'll typically either see 3 plural versus 1 singular, or 3 singular versus 1 plural. It's a super helpful hack, and it's kind of a flaw in the SAT. So this is going to be whether we're actually asking a question or not. Technologies such as microphones and inkjet printers are made using piezoelectric materials, which generate an internal electric field when pressure is applied to them. The toxic nature of some of these materials recently led a team from the University of Sheffield to investigate how, well, I'm not asking a direct question here. How could their use be better regulated? Doesn't make sense. How their use could be better regulated makes sense. So it's going to have to be B here. No direct question. This looks like it's going to be a tense question. Each night in Gijón, Spain, A section of the city's marina is bathed in a soft green glow. The source of the glow is the Arbol de la Sidra, a large sculpture made up of 3,200 recycled glass bottles, a lamp inside the tree-shaped structure. Well, this is all present tense, the is, so we're going to need to see illuminates. Apostrophe question here. French philosopher René Descartes doubted whether he could prove his own existence. He eventually found proof in his famous phrase, "I think, therefore I am." The phrase's simplicity masks its complexity. Only those who exist would be able to ponder their existence. His famous phrase, this is singular, so we can go ahead and we can take both of these out. Well, it is the phrase's simplicity, so that's where C and D are both going to work with that. And now we're being tasked for whether this is singular or plural. Well, since it's one phrase, it's one singular thing, we have to use its, T-H-E-I-R would be plural. All right, looks to be a commas question, maybe have to do with colons, we'll read through. Fans of the film Moana may not know that the deep and humorous voice behind the character Tamatoa the crab, well, the character is non-specific, so this is necessary information. Sometimes if the descriptive element before, we could put 2 commas around this, but we only see 1 comma here and 1 comma here. We can't put a colon. You need to have an independent clause before a colon. We can't stop reading there. If you're not familiar with like independent clauses and stuff, definitely check out the free trial to my Ultimate SAT course. It's going to teach you some really important basics around those. All right, onto the transitions here. Celebrated Tiwa potter Maria Martinez made her signature all black ceramic vessels using a heating technique called reduction firing. This technique involves smothering the flame surrounding the clay vessel. Blank, the vessel takes on a shiny black hue. So it seems like we're saying, we did this, because of that, this is happening. So I'm looking for some resulting transition. There we go. In the early 1970s, Albert Papa took up graffiti art, spraying his work onto what was at the time an unconventional surface, concrete. Albert's son has chosen unusual canvas for his new project, Fractured. In this remarkable work, the artist draws sharp charcoal faces onto fragmented ice floes in Finland, creating the visual effect of a face slowly fracturing. So what I kind of see is these seem to be similar. Unconventional here. This definitely is something kind of, right, unusual. We're kind of characterizing this as unconventional again. So D is going to be our only similarity transition. All right. Mary Ellen Pleasant, a successful entrepreneur during the gold rush era, earned the moniker Mother of Human Rights in California after successfully challenging discrimination in the state. Blank, in 1866, she sued a streetcar company for denying her and other black riders service, a suit she eventually won when the California Supreme Court declared it illegal for carriers to exclude passengers based on race. So this is saying she was the mother of this, and now we're kind of explaining why or giving details around it. But let me read back through, because I see for this, well, no, it's not, we're not saying because of this she was known as this. But let me read back through. So earned the moniker after challenging discrimination in the state. Okay, this is going to be specifically because we're giving details about why she earned that moniker in more detail. She earned it after successfully challenging discrimination. This is specifically saying how she challenged discrimination. In 1866, she sued a streetcar company for denying her and other black riders service, a suit she won, and then that resulted in them declaring it illegal to exclude passengers based on race. All right, the Inca of South America used intricately knotted string devices called quipus to record countable information like population data and payments. Blank, they may have used quipus to record more complex information like stories, myths, according to researchers. This is adding something different. So we're saying they did this one thing. In addition, they may have used quipus for this other thing here, not showing a result. We're not expressing it in a different way or giving an example. All right, emphasize the achievement here. That does seem to give an achievement. Doesn't talk about an achievement. And I'll read back through because I'm going to have plenty of time here, but most of the time you can jump straight to the answers with these. Doesn't talk about Mall's achievement here, but let's read through. Should be A though. In the 1930s, the Imperial Sugarcane Institute in India sought to limit the country's dependence on imported sugarcane. They enlisted botanist Janaki Amal to breed a local variety of sugarcane. She crossbred the imported sugarcane species with grass if native to India. She succeeded in creating sugarcane hybrids well suited to India's climate. That's going to be her achievement, and that's exactly what we're saying here. All right, specify how the salt enables energy storage. That doesn't say how it enables energy storage. This doesn't say how it's enabling it. This is saying like what it could do. That is saying how it could be done. Once again, we'll just like read back through. Usually like to have at least 18 minutes for the reading question, so we're gonna have plenty of time. And the first module isn't usually as tough on the timing and tough with the reading questions. Scientists have developed a freeze-thaw battery that can retain 92% of its charge after 12 weeks. The battery contains molten salt, a type of salt that liquefies when heating and solidifies at room temperature. When the salt is in a liquid state, energy flows through the battery. When the salt is in a solid state, energy stops flowing and isn't stored in it. The stored energy can be used by reheating it. So this is saying how it's enabling energy storage. Solidifies, there we go. All right, we'll go back to the reading questions here. Purpose question. The following text is from Betty Smith's 1943 novel, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. Francie, a young girl, visits the library often. Francie thought that all the books in the world were in that library, and she had a plan about reading all the books in the world. She was reading a book a day in alphabetical order and not skipping the dry ones. She remembered that the first author had been Abbott. She had been reading a book a day for a long time now, and she was still in the bees. Already she had read about the bees and buffaloes, Bermuda vacations, and Byzantine architecture. For all her enthusiasm, she had to admit that some of the bees had been hard going, but Francie was a reader. Well, the main idea is she just keeps reading along, even though this is a ton of books here. So usually main purpose should be pretty easy for us to get there once we understand kind of the central takeaway. To illustrate Francie's enjoyment of an unusual topic, nothing about this being unusual, nothing about a preference. We do show determination. We're not describing a book, so it has to be C. Function of the underline portion. The people of medieval Europe have traditionally been seen as uninterested in cleanliness and hygiene, but modern research has shown that this is largely a myth. According to historian Eleanor Janega, most medieval towns in Europe had at least one public bathhouse, which often offered both full immersion baths and more affordably steam baths. While such amenities were available mainly to town dwellers, well, this is clearly referring back to what we just talked about here. So that's going to help me with the function. Regular bathing in rivers and streams or daily sponge baths at home were common practices throughout medieval Europe. This is opposite. They're not in rural areas. They're only in towns, urban. Describes a limitation of early historian studies. It doesn't describe a limitation of the studies. Concedes that not all people in medieval Europe had access to public bathhouses. That would be true because we're just saying mainly to town dwellers. Explains why Janega decided to study the popularity of public bathhouses. Doesn't say that. Has to be C. All right, back to purpose here. When classical pianist Martha Argerich performs, it appears as if the music is coming to her spontaneously. She's highly skilled technically, but because of how freely she plays and her willingness to take risks, she seems relaxed and natural. Her apparent ease, however, is due to a tremendous amount of preparation. Despite Argerich's experience and virtuosity, she never takes for granted that she knows a piece of music. Instead, she approaches the music as if encountering it for the first time, tries to understand it anew. We're basically saying it looks like she's just like so good at this, she's not even trying, but this is all because she puts so much effort into preparing when we're looking at these. Nothing about which one she wants to perform. That should be our correct answer there. That's exactly what we just kind of highlighted. To discuss the kinds of music feels most comfortable encountering, no. To describe the unique way that Argerich approaches music she hasn't performed before, that is not what our main purpose is here. That's like, maybe we could reach there with the very last part, but that's definitely not the main purpose of the passage. How would the author of text 2 respond to the underlying claim in text 1? So I still always like to read all of these, especially if you get tight on time. Sometimes you can cut a corner here, but it's good to still read through. An excavation in Chiquihuite cave in central Mexico has upended the belief that approximately 13,000 years ago, a group known as the Clovis people were the first human inhabitants of North America. More than 200 crude stone tools, getting tongue-tied, were found and embedded in a layer of earth that is up to 33,150 years old, revealing that humans occupied the cave thousands of years before the Clovis people reached the continent. Okay. So let's see how this is being responded to. The objects uncovered in Chiquihuite Cave are intriguing, but it's premature to characterize them as tools. The stone pieces are so roughly shaped that they may have simply fractured from rocks during natural geological activity in the cave. Moreover, their unearthing has thus far not been accompanied by discoveries of other signs of human activity or even traces of human DNA from the surface as well. This is clearly disagreeing this, because what we're saying is the tools were found, and because they were tools, this is saying humans lived there. But this person is saying, maybe they weren't actually tools, and we don't see any human DNA or other stuff, so they're probably not tools. So this whole idea that we're upending this belief probably isn't true. Definitely not that. We're very against it. That would be correct by asserting it rests on an assumption about the stone pieces. That's that they were tools. It's not sufficiently supported by evidence. That's what we're kind of saying down here. By acknowledging that it will most likely be proved correct when the stone pieces no, they're against it. By pointing out that it fails to account for evidence that the Clovis people were active on the continent as early as is commonly thought. Nothing to do with that. Main idea of the text here. Many literary theorists distinguish between fabula, a narrative's content, in sayuzet, a narrative's, those are some new words for me, a narrative's arrangement and presentation of events. In the film The Godfather Part 2, the fabula is the story of the Corleone family. So the narrative is the story of the family. In the sayuzet, the arrangement, I'm always trying to connect what we're looking through. Sometimes these words can trip students up otherwise. So the sayuzet, the arrangement and presentation, is the presentation as it goes through the two timelines. But literary theorist Mikhail Bakhtin maintained that fabula and sayuzet are insufficient to completely describe a narrative. So the content and the arrangement aren't enough to describe a narrative. He held that systematic categorizations of artistic phenomena, so just things, discount the subtle way in which meaning is created by interactions between the artist, the work, and the audience. So main thing here is he's really just saying these two things aren't, if I was probably highlighting my main idea, it seems like this last part is really going to be the main idea of the text here. Literary theorist Bakhtin argued that there are important characteristics of narratives that are not fully encompassed by two concepts that other theorists have used. That's the main thing he's saying. The two concepts are the fabula and sayuzet, and he's basically saying they're not doing a good job of capturing these interactions, which also are a really important part. But let's take a look at the others here. Literary theorist Bakhtin claimed that meaning is not inherent in a narrative, but it is created when an audience encounters a narrative, so that narratives are interpreted differently by different people. This is like a could be true answer, but I don't have evidence for this in here. This is too much of a stretch for what we're saying, and this is really discounting these being pretty important parts of the text as well. The storytelling methods used in The Godfather Part 2 may seem unusually complicated, but they can be easily understood when two concepts, well, we're saying we need more than those two, so that doesn't make sense. Narratives that are told out of chronological order are more difficult. Definitely not talking about the order affecting difficulty. Completing the statement here. The passage of time is among the many obstacles faced by scientists who are pursuing de-extinction efforts. That is, efforts to use breeding or a mixture of cloning and genetic engineering to bring back extinct species. Specifically, researchers are concerned that the longer a species has been extinct, the less likely it is that a suitable habitat still exists for that species. Among the candidate species for de-extinction, this problem would be especially concerning for, okay, so whatever's been extinct for the longest. So probably first thing I'm going to be looking for is the saber-toothed cat, because this has been extinct for 11,000 years. If I don't see that as an answer, I'm going to start working my way back in order through these from ones that have been extinct for the longest time. Passenger pigeon, and this is also comparing it to the Hia. It's not a comparison. We're talking about one particular thing, excuse me. Saber-toothed cat, that should be our answer. Well, the mammoth was not several thousand years before the cat, so that's just wrong given the data. And that would be the most recent, so that would make no sense to use. Illustrates the claim. The Yellow Wallpaper is an 1892 short story by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. In the story, the narrator expresses mixed feelings about her surroundings. Well, this is interesting. The test 5 I took yesterday had a question like this about ambivalence, which is mixed feelings. So they're really hammering away at this concept. The wallpaper has, so I just really need to see like positive and negative is what I'm looking for when I see mixed feelings or ambivalence. The wallpaper has a kind of sub-pattern in a different shade, a particularly irritating one, for you can only see it in certain lights and not clearly then. Well, negative, but I don't see anything positive. By moonlight, the moon shines in all night. When there is a moon, I wouldn't know it was the same paper. I don't see any negative or positive there. I'm really getting quite fond of the big room, all but the horrid wallpaper. Well, there's my positive and negative. The color is repellent, almost revolting, a smoldering, unclean yellow, strangely faded by the slowly turning sunlight, only negative. Okay, complete the comparison here. The only flowering plant species native to Antarctica, I'm going to skip pronouncing these, this and this, grow in places where, and this is one thing to note, if you do get to these like super scientific terms, honestly, you can just plug in like C and D, make it easier on yourself. Don't feel like you have to like work through them. Otherwise, they can feel overwhelming as you're trying to read the text. Grow in places where the earth remains free of ice for much of the year. Botanist Nicoletta Canone wondered how the warming of Antarctica's climate in the recent years had affected these species. So she visited a site in Antarctica, first in 2009 and later in 2018, to count the number of plants growing there. Canone found that the area of land covered by the two species had significantly expanded during the 9-year period. While both species likely benefited from the warming temperatures, the C one, so we're looking for something, we're completing the comparison, and we're talking about this. So if I'm looking at C compared to D, it's not increasing as much in general total, but the percent it's increasing by is significantly larger. So that's the main stuff I'm looking at. We don't have any evidence that this is suppressing the growth of the other one. That's something like could be true, but we don't have any evidence here. So a greater expansion than Deschampsia or Antarctica, increasing the area of land it covered by more than half. Well, it did increase by more than 50%, but I'm going to look through the rest of these here. Showed a greater increase in average size of individual plants. Nothing to do with the size of the plants. This is just the area covered. So that's wrong. Covered land newly freed from ice at a rate 55% faster. This is not the rate that it's doing. This is just the percent. So this also just wrong given what we see there. Supporting the idea here. As media consumption has become increasingly multi-platform and socially mediated, active news acquisition has diminished in favor of an attitude known as news finds me, in which people passively rely on their social networks and ambient media environments for information about current events. Homero Gilday Zuniga and Trevor Deal, so this is what we're really starting to tune into now, examined data on a representative group of adults in the U.S. to determine participant strength of NFM attitude, political knowledge, and political interest. Although no major election took place sufficiently near the study for Zuniga and Deal to identify causality between NFM and voting behavior, they did posit, they did think that NFM may reduce voting probability through an indirect effect. So this is the main thing. So this is the idea they're advancing. So there's not causality, but they do think that it is going to reduce voting probability through an indirect effect. So there's some relationship, but we have to be like taking a step between the two of them. NFM attitude tends to increase in strength as major elections approach. I think we also talked about, no, that I think would be too, but we'll go through the rest of this. And people are significantly more likely to vote in major elections than minor elections. Well, no comparison of major and minor. This has nothing to do with their idea here at all, of an indirect effect doing it. NFM attitude has a strong negative effect on political knowledge and interest, and there is known to be a strong positive correlation between political knowledge and interest and the likelihood of voting. I'm going to have to reread that. So NFM attitude has a strong negative effect on political knowledge and interest, and there's a known strong positive correlation between political knowledge and interest and the likelihood of voting. Okay, so this would show us an indirect effect because we're saying this is negatively affecting political knowledge, and political knowledge and interest and the likelihood of voting are related. So this would be affecting voting probability through an indirect effect. So I think it should be B, but I'm going to read through the rest of these. Make sure I'm not misinterpreting something there. Political interest is known to have a strong positive effect on likelihood of voting, but shows only a weak positive effect on political knowledge. And NFM attitude shows little correlation. Well, we need to have some relationship because it is doing an indirect effect, but it still would need to be correlated with one of those things if it's indirectly affecting the voting probability here. The likelihood of voting increases as political knowledge increases, and the relationship between NFM attitude and political knowledge tends to strengthen as the size of people's social network increases. Likelihood of voting increases as political knowledge increases, and the relationship between NFM and political knowledge, well, this is not what their idea is, that there's some relationship between this and the size of social networks increasing or decreasing, so it's got to be B here. Is this the last one, or we have one more? Okay, two more. In dialects of English spoken in Scotland, the R sound is strongly emphasized when it appears at the end of syllables, as in car, or before other consonant sounds, as in bird. English dialects of the Upland South, a region stretching from Oklahoma to Western Virginia, place similar emphasis on R at the end of syllables and before other consonant sounds. So these things are basically saying the same things are happening in these two places. Historical records show that Upland South was colonized largely by people whose ancestors came from Scotland. Thus, linguists have concluded, well, it would make sense that basically the Upland South is populated by, not populated, we already said that, but the Upland South got these from people who came from Scotland is the only thing that I can really think about here. Yeah, so that's exactly what we're kind of saying, but we'll read through here. Only logical conclusion, just connecting what we see in the text here. Emphasis on the R sound will eventually spread from English dialects spoken in Upland South to dialects spoken elsewhere. Could be true, but that has nothing to do with the R coming from Scotland and it being the same in the Upland South and people coming from Scotland colonizing the Upland South. The English dialects spoken in Scotland were influenced by dialects spoken in Upland South. This is flipping the relationship because they came from Scotland, so the opposite doesn't make sense. People from Scotland abandoned their emphasis on the R sound after relocating to the Upland South. Well, that's opposite because we're saying the same thing was happening there. All right. In 2016, biological anthropologist Heather F. Smith and her team investigated the evolution of the appendix, an intestinal organ that is present in some mammals, including humans, but is generally thought to have no function. Studying 533 mammal species, the team found that the appendix has emerged independently across multiple lineages in separate instances and significantly hasn't disappeared after emerging in specific lineages. Moreover, the team determined that species with the organ tend to have higher concentrations of lymphoid tissues, which supports immune responses in the cecum, the organ the appendix is attached to. Therefore, the team hypothesized that the appendix likely... Okay, well, the main stuff here is this is all kind of background information here, but this is all the evidence that I'm really looking at. It hasn't disappeared, and it's basically helping with immune functions by helping the cecum. So I'm looking for something that's connecting those ideas here. was once present in many non-mammal species but has since disappeared. Well, we're saying right here is it hasn't disappeared, so that's opposite. Has been preserved in certain mammal species because it benefits their immune systems. That would make sense. Will emerge in a greater number of mammal species because it may serve as a necessary function. We're not talking about an emergence in a greater number of them. That's going outside of the bounds of the text here. Produced higher concentrations of lymphoid tissues in mammals in the past than it currently does. No relationship between time change. So we will jump on up to the next section. I'm going to have to swap out my camera battery here. If you've been learning a lot in the video so far and you want to learn everything that you need to know to get a perfect score on the digital SAT from me, check out the free trial to my Ultimate SAT course. It's going to give you a few hours of free content, and we're going to teach you some of the most important foundational grammar rules, and we're going to cover a math concept that shows up on every single SAT. It's also going to give you a feel for how the full Ultimate SAT course is going to work, which I think is by far the best online resource out there for helping students get really high scores on the SAT. It's also backed by a 100-point score improvement guarantee, so go ahead and check out that free trial now or at the end of the video. All right, so I'm going to go a bit faster through some of these types of questions because usually the reading ones are going to take a bit more time, especially with me reading through everything. The War of 1812 has blank place in historical memory in Britain, partly because it is overshadowed by the much larger concurrent conflict against Napoleonic France, and partly because it essentially maintained the geopolitical status quo for Britain. The country neither gained nor lost significant territory or position as a result of the participation in it. So we're saying it's like overshadowed, and it basically wasn't something that was that notable or important. So we could say it has like a tenuous. This would be opposite. It's not enduring. Nothing about it being contentious. Conspicuous would be obvious. So it's going to have to be tenuous here. In 1891, design artist William Morris co-founded the Kelmscott Press, which printed editions of books using pre-industrial methods. Historians argue that Morris's repudiation of industrialization going against industrialization is blank in the Kelmscott's edition's use of handmade materials and intricate ornamentation reminiscent of medieval manuscripts. These meticulously handcrafted elements exemplify the artistry involved. So we're saying basically him going against this is shown in all of what he's doing here. So it's going to have to be manifested. That's the only one that will make sense there. Blank, the long-standing trend of overemphasizing teenagers and young adults in research on social media use, scholars have recently begun to expand their focus to include the fastest-growing cohort of social media users, senior citizens. So this is kind of saying like fixing this problem here. So to redress is to resolve. This is a hard word. Exasperate, make worse. Epitomize is like the best of it. Preclude is to stop or prevent from happening, but that doesn't make sense here. We're basically saying we're helping to improve this. Disputing most nearly means. The following text is adapted from James Baldwin's 1856 novel Giovanni's Room. The narrator is riding in a taxi down a street lined with food vendors and shoppers in Paris, France. The multitude of Paris seems to be dressed in blue every day but Sunday, for when the most part they put on an unbelievably festive black. Here they were now in blue, disputing every inch of our passage with their wagons, hand trucks, their bursting baskets carried out at an angle steeply self-confident on the back. So he's in a taxi going down the street. They're doing something to his passage with all this other stuff here, so they have to be like blocking or stopping it here. Has to be providing resistance to. That's the only thing that would make sense. All right, I'm going to jump up to the grammar again. So there should be our odd one out again. Such iconic French recipes. Here's our extra information. Epitomize, recipes plural, epitomize plural. So I said I'm going to go a little faster because I'm going to probably need more time for the reading questions here. Looks to be some sort of sentence structure question. Array diagram reveals how this works. Independent clause. Because the whole small size restricts light to a single ray. Dependent clause. All light passing through the hole can only survive at a single destination, eliminating diffraction and ensuring a clear image. This is another independent clause. So we have two full sentences here. This is what I kind of call an advanced sentence structure question. It requires you to understand how to spot independent, dependent, extra information and put all these pieces together, but We can think of it as full sentence up to here, full sentence after. The only thing that's going to let us properly join those two full sentences is B. D is wrong because if we say it is because the whole small size restricts light to a single ray, this comma no longer is working properly here. All right. This is all one big sentence. Long attributed to Jacques-Louis David, the preeminent neoclassical painter of his day, the 1801 painting Marie-Josephine Charlotte Duval d'Angers, or however we pronounce that, gained fresh attention in the 1990s when art historians discovered that the painting, which depicts a solitary young woman sketching, was actually the work of little-known French portrait artist. Well, French portrait artists, this is the names rule, could refer to a bunch of different people, so we cannot section this off with any commas. So B is going to be our correct answer. No different between A and C as well. This is making this extra information, which is inappropriate here. We have to understand when stuff is basically conceptually necessary versus non-necessary for some of these really hard questions on the test. If you've been learning a lot in the video so far and you want to learn everything that you need to know to get a perfect score on the digital SAT from me, check out the free trial to my Ultimate SAT course. It's going to give you a few hours of free content, and we're going to teach you some of the most important foundational grammar rules, and we're going to cover a math concept that shows up on every single SAT. It's also going to give you a feel for how the full Ultimate SAT course is going to work, which I think is by far the best online resource out there for helping students get really high scores on the SAT. It's also backed by a 100-point score improvement guarantee, so go ahead and check out that free trial now or at the end of the video. So dash, I see some dashes here, probably a dash question. Kale paired excerpts of these conversations with photographs, both of interviewees, and the items they blank, to powerful effect in her exhibition, The Blind. So it looks like all of this I probably want to take out, but let me read through. Easiest thing between the two dashes, see if we can pull it out. We can't use the single dash here because this isn't functioning, giving just, it would have to function the same as a colon, so we're going to need a second dash here. So both of interviewees and the items they described, I would just read from here. Kale paired excerpts of these conversations with photographs from hair to grass to sculptures. This doesn't make sense if we just put it here, because this is giving information about the items they described. So we can really reread this as Kale paired excerpts of these conversations with photographs to powerful effect in her exhibition, The Blind. We can yank all of that out. This is kind of extra information inside of the extra information. All right, some sort of punctuation question in here. American abstract artist Richard Serra blank his installations to make passersby keenly aware of how one's movements are affected by the physical features of one environment. This is the important thing we have to pick up. We've got a comma hanging out here. Assembles large-scale steel plates into sculptures that dominate the outdoor spaces they occupy. Well, I could say American abstract artist Richard Serra assembles large-scale steel plates into sculptures that dominate the outdoor spaces they occupy. So I need extra information. Intends is not going to function properly for extra information. We're typically looking for these ing verbs. Odd one out again here. The toxins the organism uses to protect itself from predation. So the toxins increase its attractiveness to predators. So B is going to be our correct answer there. A lot of those subject-verb agreement questions we've seen on this test. Historians agree that jazz pianist Jelly Roll Morton was exaggerating when he claimed to have invented jazz music. No one can deny blank that Morton's innovative compositions and remarkable improvisational skills helped shape jazz as a genre during its early years. So this was exaggerated, but he still did have a really big impact on jazz. So that's where we're going to have to see though here. We're showing a little bit of kind of contrast. We're saying even though this was exaggeration, though this still actually was the case here. Biographer Michael Gora notes that the novelist Henry James lived in a world of second thoughts, frequently tinkering with his novels and stories after their initial publication. However, the differences between the 1881 first edition and the 1908 edition of his novel A Portrait of a Lady are extreme, even by James standards. Blank Some critics regard the two editions as two different novels altogether. So he tinkered with them. Differences first are extreme. So this is kind of like some sort of emphasis here. It's going to have to be in fact. In hindsight, given the ideas about the natural world circulating among British scientists in the 1800s, the theory of natural selection was an obvious next step. It may not have been a coincidence, blank, that Charles Darwin and Alfred Wallace arrived at the concept independently. Indeed, contrary to the popular myth of the lone genius, theirs is not the first paradigm-shifting, like kind of completely changing the way we look at something, theory to have emerged from multiple scholars working in parallel. So we're saying it was an obvious next step. Basically, because it was an obvious next step, it's not that surprising that they came to the same thing here. Definitely not showing a contrast. This is kind of our resulting one, so I think that should be it. Not adding on, not giving an example. It's going to have to be B here. In a recent study, researchers examined the sleeping and walking habits of a group of dairy cows to determine if the cow's pattern of activity suggested that the animals were diurnal, nocturnal, or crepuscular. Blank, the researchers studied whether the cows were most active in the daytime, diurnal, nighttime, nocturnal, or dawn and dusk. This is saying the same thing, just giving us kind of more context here with these terms. So it's in other words. Emphasize the similarity between these two. That seems to give a similarity. That's a difference. Not the two of them. Difference, it's going to have to be A here. I'll read through super quickly. Yeah, it's just about moving the ground. Classification category. We saw one of these on like the 5th test here. So probably going to need some context for this one here. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Species keeps a list of all our species. Species on the list are classified as either endangered or threatened. A species that is in danger of extinction throughout most or all of its ranges is classified as endangered. A species that is likely to soon become endangered is classified as threatened. The California red-legged frog is likely to soon become endangered. So if something is likely to soon become endangered, it's classified as threatened. So that's what I'm really looking at here, is all of this important detail. That's not indicating the classification category. It's not at risk, making sure I'm not mixing. Nope. Not in the endangered category. Likely to soon become endangered is classified as threatened. So it's going to have to be D here. Yeah, okay. Wanted to make sure I just wasn't misreading something there. The student wants to make a generalization about the materials used in DHOW replicas. So generalizations, again, usually good to like read through because we're just taking a small thing and making it a little bit more general or broad. Ancient Arab DHOW was a sailing vessel distinguishable by its triangular sails and stitched hull construction. DHOWs were used primarily for trade along the coast of Arab, South Asian, and East African countries. Contemporary shipbuilders in Oman use a mix of modern and traditional materials to build replicas. Most of the materials used are traditional. Replica hulls are stitched together using the same traditional coconut palm fiber rope used on the hulls of the ancient DHOW. So generalization in the replicas. That's not talking about the replicas here. For trade. Not talking about the replicas. That would be a bit of a generalization. Most of the stuff is traditional. Some is still used. Talks about the replicas, but this doesn't give any sort of generalization, so it's going to have to be C there. All right, so we should be good on time here. I'm going to still try to go. Usually these last few, like completes the text ones or supporting the claims ones, are pretty tough in this second module. So I'm going to still try to push the pace a little here. On painter William H. Johnson's return to the U.S. in 1938, after a decade in Europe, his style underwent an abrupt transformation, turning away from landscapes painted in expressionist style, a style that often involves using fluid, distorted shapes and thick textured brushstrokes to express artists' subjective experience of reality. Johnson began painting portraits of Black Americans in a bold new way. Well, this is just detailing the transformation here. Evocative of that African sculpture in American and Scandinavian folk art, these portraits feature flat, deliberately oversimplified figures in a vibrant but limited color palette. That seems to be true here. Transitional moment. Don't actually see a moment here. I don't think that's going to be right. Provides information about Johnson's travels in support of a claim about his artistic influences. Doesn't talk about his travels there at all. He's talking about his change in styles that enabled. Okay, well, so moment. Oh, abrupt transformation. There's our moment. Okay, I missed that detail. Which choice best describes the function of the underlined portion in the text as a whole? Scholarly accounts of the Chicano movement, a movement that advocated for the social, political, and cultural empowerment of Mexican Americans and reached its zenith in the 1960s and 1970s, tend to focus on the most militant, outspoken figures in the movement, making it seem uniformly radical. Geographer Juan Herrera has shown, however, that if we shift our focus toward the way the movement manifested in comparatively low-profile neighborhood institutions and projects, we see participants espousing an array of political orientations and approaches to community activism. So we're saying these old ones really focused on this. So this is kind of showing us like the problem that he's kind of starting to address, because he's saying, okay, well, if we go outside of just those and we look at the others, we see these kind of big differences here. It presents a trend in scholarship on the Chicano movement that the text claims have been reevaluated by researchers in light of his work, never showing that it's being reevaluated by other people. We're just saying Herrera has shown that if we shift our focus away towards basically the movement in low profile areas, we see participants showing like a bigger, broader range of things. It identifies an aspect of the Chicano movement that the text implies was overemphasized by scholars due to their own political orientations. This last part is too specific. I don't see anything about their own political orientations. Describes a common approach to studying the Chicano movement that, according to the text, obscures the diversity, obscures this big array of the movement's participants. That looks to be true. Ideological is like the political orientations and approaches. It summarizes the conventional method for analyzing the Chicano movement, which the text suggests creates a misleading impression of the effectiveness of these. Doesn't have anything to do with creating a misleading approach of the effectiveness of institutions and projects. Why are some critics skeptical of the concept behind Bosco Vertical? Since its completion in 2014, Bosco Vertical, a pair of residential towers in Milan, Italy, covered by vegetation, has become a striking symbol of environmental sustainability in architecture. Stefano Boeri intended his design, which features balconies that are home to hundreds of trees, to serve as a model for promoting urban biodiversity. However, the concept has faced criticism. Critics, so this is probably my evidence, critics note that although the trees used in Bosco Vertical were specifically cultivated for the project, it's too early to tell if they can actually thrive. So this is their criticism. We don't actually know if this is going to work. Nothing about other locations. Nothing about the variety. Nothing about that at all. D is going to be our correct one. Main idea here. Elizabeth Assedu has identified a negative correlation between the share of developing countries' economies derived from natural resource extraction and those countries' receipts of foreign investment. This may appear counterintuitive. Resource extraction requires initial investments in extraction technology, for instance, at scales best met by multinational corporations. But Asidou notes that the natural resource industry's boom-bust cycle can destabilize local currencies and increase developing countries' vulnerability to external shocks, creating levels of uncertainty to which foreign investors are typically averse. Well, main thing here is it sounds like what we're saying is there's this negative relationship between basically foreign investment and the share of a country's income or economy that they're coming from. There we go. My brain was pausing for a second. From natural resource extraction. This is something we wouldn't think was the case, but we kind of give some reasons why this is. So although it may seem surprising that foreign investment declines in developing countries as natural resource extractions makes up a larger share of those countries' economies, that decline happens because resource extraction requires initial investments too large. This is not the reason, so that's the part that makes A wrong. Although developing countries tend to become less dependent on foreign investment as natural resource industries make up a larger share of their economies, I don't think this part is going to be correct here. This change may not occur if the boom-bust cycle of those industries destabilizes. No, this part we're not seeing there. Although one might expect that foreign investment would increase as natural resource extraction makes up a larger share of developing countries' economies, that would be going back to what we kind of said here, so it looks good so far. The opposite happens because heavy reliance on natural resources can lead to unattractive conditions for investors, right? They're averse, that's stuff they don't like, so should be C here. Although foreign investors tend to avoid initial investments in natural resource industries in developing countries, foreign investment may increase significantly as those industries stabilize. Could be true, but this is completely outside of the passage. So it's going to have to be C here. Based on the text, Huang, Seeger, and colleagues would most likely agree with which statement about atmospheric NH3. So I'm reading for that in particular. Some astronomers searching for extraterrestrial life has proposed that atmospheric NH3 can serve as a biosignature gas, an indication the planet harbors life. Jincheng Huang, Sarah Seeger, and colleagues evaluated this possibility, finding that rocky planets atmospheric NH3 likely couldn't reach detectably high levels in the absence of biological activity. But the team also found that on so-called mini Neptunes, gas planets smaller than Neptune but with atmospheres similar to Neptune's, atmospheric pressure and temperature can be high enough to produce this. So what it looks like it's saying is it's basically good on rocky planets because it can't get there without activity, but the mini Neptunes could get there. Its presence is more likely to indicate that a planet is a mini Neptune than the planet is a rocky planet that could support life. Don't see that matching up to what we're saying here. Its absence from a planet that's not a mini Neptune indicates that the planet probably doesn't have life. Its absence from a planet that's not a mini Neptune indicates, well, we'd have to be talking about rocky because it's not like there's only these two things. It should be treated as a biosignature gas if detected in the atmosphere of a rocky planet. So there we go. This is just far too broad because there's a bunch of other varieties. Should be treated as a biosignature gas if detected in the atmosphere of a rocky planet, but not if detected in the atmosphere of a mini Neptune. That should be our right answer. That's what we were kind of saying as we recapped it. Nope. Okay, I'm gonna have to pick up the pace here. This one should be quick. Lines Written in Early Spring is a 1798 poem by William Wordsworth. In the poem, the speaker describes having, man, we're really just hammering away at the contradictory feelings here. Contradictory feelings while experiencing the sights and sounds of a spring day. So same thing, I'm looking for good and bad. Through primrose tufts and that sweet bower, the periwinkle trailed its wreaths, and 'tis my face that every flower enjoys the air it breathes. Don't see any sort of good and bad here. The budding twigs spread out their fan to catch the breezy air, and I must think, do all I can, there was pleasure there. I only see good. The birds around me hopped and played, their thoughts I cannot measure, but the last motion which they made It'd seem a thrill of pleasure. That all seems to be good, so it's got to be D here unless I missed something. I heard 1,000 blended notes while in a grove I sat reclined in that sweet mood when pleasant thoughts bring sad thoughts to the mind. There's our good and bad. All right, supporting the conclusion. Ibanez and colleagues studied a forest site in which some sugar maple trees received periodic fertilization with nitrogen to mimic the broader trend of increasing anthropogenic nitrogen decomposition in soil. Ibanez and colleagues modeled the radial growth of the trees with and without nitrogen fertilization under 3 different climate scenarios: current, moderate, extreme. Although they found that climate change would negatively affect growth, they concluded, this is what we're looking for, they concluded that anthropogenic nitrogen deposition could more than offset the provided change, more than offset that effect, provided the change is moderate rather than extreme. So what we're saying is, if we're looking back at this, so this is our current, so we're saying more than offset. So what we're seeing is this is greater than this, but it's not working once it gets to extreme. So I want to probably see something involving those pieces here. Growth with nitrogen under current climate exceeded growth with nitrogen under moderate. Well, that's not what we're comparing there. That's not more than offsetting the effect. Growth without nitrogen under the current climate exceeded growth without nitrogen under the moderate climate, but the latter exceeded growth with nitrogen under extreme change. We're talking about having the nitrogen works if it's moderate, so that's our issue. Growth with nitrogen under moderate change exceeded growth without nitrogen under moderate change. But the latter exceeded growth without nitrogen under extreme change. I don't think that's right, but we might have to circle back to that. Growth with nitrogen under moderate change exceeded growth without nitrogen under the current climate. That's showing more than offset. That's what we were looking for. This is doing an even better job. It's more than offsetting it. But the latter exceeded growth with nitrogen under extreme change. So it's basically like under extreme, it doesn't work. All right. 12, 13, 14. Okay. Should be okay on time. Under normal atmospheric pressure at Earth's surface, water molecules form a tetrahedral network stabilized by hydrogen bonds between adjacent molecules. Extreme high pressure, such as can be found in deep ocean waters, destabilizes these bonds and compresses water's structure, allowing water molecules within organisms to permeate proteins and impede crucial biological functions. Yet deep sea organisms known as piezophiles have adapted to extreme pressure. Studies have found a positive correlation between the depths that various piezophiles inhabit and the concentrations of a compound called TMAO in their muscle tissue, which has led a team of researchers to hypothesize that TMAO reduces water's compressibility. Okay, so this is their hypothesis. It reduces it getting compressed as we're dealing with these pressures here. Water molecules are found to be impervious to TMAO. Well, if they're impervious, that means it wouldn't be able to reduce them. We'll read through the rest of this. Even when, yeah, if they're impervious, it's not helping, so that can't be right. Examination of TMAO's molecular structure shows that TMAO molecules retain their shape even as pressure increases. I'm going to leave that. That seems to be good. A positive correlation is found between concentrations of TMAO and the rate at which the structure compresses as pressure increases. Well, that would be saying it'd be going opposite. If it's positive correlation, more TMAO, that's not what we're looking for. Analysis of water's molecular structure under high pressure reveals that hydrogen bonds are more stable when TMAO is present than when it is not. Okay, what's the difference here? Retain more, oh, okay. So this is gonna have to be, this is extreme, this is completely do it. Reduces, that's B's wrong because it says retain. That means it would stop it from happening at all. All right, support Persad and her colleagues' conclusion here. Some climate models for Western U.S. predict that while total annual precipitation may remain unchanged from the present levels, precipitation will become concentrated. I'm gonna stop talking out loud so I can read a little faster in case we get a killer question on the next one. Okay, we'll pick back up down here. So this is the important part. Persad and her colleagues concluded that the concentration of precipitation into fewer events would result in a higher number of dry days, triggering more irrigation, but that this change in irrigation output is highly sensitive to the baseline concentration of precipitation that currently exists in the area. Persad and her colleagues concluded the concentration of precipitation into fewer events would result in a higher number of dry days, triggering more irrigation, but this change in irrigation is highly sensitive to the baseline concentration that currently exists. So these are two different types of baseline concentrations. These are our percent changes. So I need to see some comparison across these because they're saying it's sensitive to the baseline concentration of precipitation that currently exists in an area. So this would be showing us a difference. If baseline precipitation is somewhat concentrated, the amount of water being used for irrigation will increase 0.4% for surface water. Okay, and 0.9% for groundwater, whereas the amount of water entering aquifers will increase 11% if baseline precipitation is evenly distributed. Okay, so that looks like that might be good here. If baseline precipitation is somewhat concentrated, water use for irrigation will increase only slightly, whereas it will increase 9% for surface water. All right, so my recording randomly stopped. So for this one here, B is our correct answer as I started hitting a bunch of stuff randomly here because this one here is talking about aquifers and Persad is only talking about irrigation. It's giving us the comparison we want. So I'm gonna have to really scoot through this last one here. So I'm just gonna read through without talking. Okay, so they're not surprised to find this, so this is what we're going to be focusing on. The researchers noted that previous studies focused on this may inadvertently facilitate novel, so new behaviors that are purposeless. So that would be purposeless and that would be new, male to female. I'm pretty sure it's going to be A, but I'm going to run out of time. So it should be A here though, yeah. All right, I will change out my battery so I don't have another recording issue and jump over to math. All right, so we'll pick back up with the math portion of the test here. A certain bird species can fly at an average rate of 16 meters per second when in continuous flight. At this rate, how many meters would this bird fly in 4 seconds? Well, we're just doing 4 times 16, which is going to give us 64. Line R in the xy plane has a slope of 4, so we can get rid of these ones that don't have a slope of 4, and passes through the point 0, 6. We find our y-intercept when x is 0, so it means our y-intercept is 6. Which expression is equivalent to 5x to the 5th minus 6x to the 4th plus 8x cubed? This is not going to give us any sort of 8x cubed. X cubed times 5x squared is going to give us 5x to the 5th. X cubed minus 6x is going to give us 6x to the 4th. X cubed times 8 is going to give us 8x cubed. That's going to be our correct answer. These are both going to give us leading terms way off of what we're looking for here. The equation x plus y equals 1,440 represents the number of minutes of daylight between sunrise and sunset, x, and the number of minutes of non-daylight, y, on a particular day in Oak Park, Illinois. If this day has 640 minutes of daylight, how many minutes of non-daylight does it have? Okay, so x is daylight, y is non-daylight. So we're just doing 1,440 minus the 670, which is going to give us 770. Yes. Scott selected 20 employees at random from all 400 employees at the company. He found that 16 of the 20 employees in this sample are enrolled in exactly 3 professional development courses this year. Based on Scott's findings, which of the following is the best estimate of the number of employees at the company who are enrolled in exactly 3 professional development courses this year? So this is just a ratio, so we can actually just do this in Desmos. So we're going to say 16 is to 20. as x is to 400, and we can zoom on out here, and that will give us our answer here of 320. Make sure, yeah, 16 is, yeah, we're looking for 4/5 of 400, 320. Which equation has the same solution as the given equation? So these are all 2x, well, we might have to check these ones different, but 2x minus 3, well, if we just divide both sides by 7 here, 63 divided by 7 is 9, so 2x minus 3 equals 9 is going to be the same as this. We could graph these and just make sure they have the same solution, but we're just dividing 7 here. 63 divided by 7 equals 9. 7 times 2x minus 3 divided by 7 gives us 2x minus 3. The given equation relates the positive numbers c, p, and k. Which equation correctly expresses c in terms of p and k? Well, we just need to get the c left alone, so we just need to add over this 7. So that's going to give us 25p plus k plus 7. That's going to give us our correct answer. A function p estimates there were 2,000 animals in a population in 1998. Each year from 1998 to 2010, the function estimates that the number of animals in this population increased by 3% of the number of animals in the population the previous year. Which equation defines the function where p of x is the estimated number of animals in the population x years after 2000? So 2,000 is our starting value, so all of these have that. Since we're showing a 3% increase, this portion in here is always 1 plus or minus the percent increase. D would be showing us a 3% decrease. 3% is the same as 0.03, so 1.03 is what we have to see in there to show a 3% increase year over year. This would show us a 97% increase. This would show us a 200% increase. Which expression is equivalent to x squared plus 11 squared plus x minus 5 times x plus 5. All right, I'll go ahead and I'll actually do this out just to make sure. So if we have x squared plus 11 squared plus our x minus 5 times our x plus 5, this is going to be a difference of squares here. So this is going to be x squared minus 25, x squared plus 11 squared. This is going to be the same as x to the 4th plus 22x squared plus 121. So now we're just going to add all these terms. So we'll have x to the 4th plus 23x squared. 121 minus 25 should give us plus 96 here. So B is our correct answer here. Now, if you ever get overwhelmed by these, remember equivalent tricks, we can always just express both of these as y equals, and whichever one gives us the same graph is a super easy confirmation for these that you found the right answer. Plus x minus 5 times x plus 5. So we get this kind of super steep graph here, but I would just kind of zoom in so I can see it. But when we go through and we graph B, we should see, as long as I haven't made a mistake here, that these are going to be identical graphs. So once we put in this plus 96, we can see exact same graph. We turn it off and on, same graph appears. That tells me it's equivalent. That's like a cheating way of working through this. An egg is thrown from a rooftop. The equation h minus 4.9t squared plus 9t plus 18 represents a situation where h is the height of the egg above ground in meters, t seconds after it is thrown. According to the equation, what is the height in meters from which the egg was thrown? So this is asking for your y-intercept. So in ax squared plus bx plus c form, this 18 is always your y-intercept, or your starting value from where something began when no time has passed. So 18 is going to be our correct answer there. All right, if we'll go through this two separate ways once again. So if 4 square root of 2x equals 16, what is the value of 6x? So if we're going to do this kind of the math teacher way, we're going to solve for x and then we're going to multiply it by 16. In this case, I can probably solve for 2x, so I can divide both sides by 4 and multiply it by 3. Root 2x is equal to 4. So if we square both sides of this equation, we'll get that 2x is equal to 16. Well, if we're looking for 6x, we need to multiply this entire expression by 3. So this will give us that 6x equals 48, and that will give us our correct answer. Now, once again, we can just go ahead and we can solve for x graphically. So if we want to solve this equation, we could set both sides equal. Usually, it's easier to just do the y equals trick for most students because it always gives us a point of interest here. So we'll do y equals root 2, 4 times root 2x, y equals 16. Now we should see an intersection point. So that's going to give us the value of x. So now if we're looking for the value of 6x, we would be doing 8 times 6, which is going to give us our 48. So a few different ways we can approach these, especially if you're prone to making silly mistakes. Using Desmos is super helpful. The relationship between two variables x and y is linear. For every increase in the value of x by 1, the value of y increases by 8. So this is our slope, because slope is rise over run. For every increase in x, how much y increases. So it has to have a slope of 8. So I could move on at this point on this question. We'll get some varieties of this where you see like multiple answers with the same slope, so we'll talk about how we can finish it off. When the value of x is 2, the value of y is 18. At this point, I would simply plug in 2 for x, so 8 times 2 is equal to 16, plus 2 is equal to 18, y is equal to 18. If you see both sides of the equation are equal to each other when you plug in the points, that's kind of your confirmation that equation is correct. As I said, in this instance, we could just move on because we already know the slope has to be 8. How many distinct solutions does the given equation have? This is just going to be an upwards facing parabola, like your basic parabola with no shifts. And this is a line at negative 841, so we're going to have no solutions here. Once again, if you get these questions, easiest thing to do is let's just graph these. So y equals x to the second. There's our kind of basic parabola starting at 0. And y equals negative 841. Well, you're going to see there is no way in the world these two things are ever intersecting because it's an upwards facing parabola and our line is all the way down there. The two box plots show the distribution of the number of books read over the summer by students in two different English classes. What is the positive difference between the ranges of the number of books read over the summer for the two classes? So ranges, difference from our smallest to our largest. So our range for class A is going to be 5. Our range for class B from 1 to 10 is going to be 9. So we're looking for the difference between 9 and 5. And I'm just going to be super careful that I didn't make a mistake here as I'm talking and going quickly. So 5, 9. So 9 minus 5 is going to give us our correct answer here of 4. The length of the edge of the base. So this is where you should start to see some trickier questions here. The length of the edge of a base of a right square prism is 6 units. The volume of the prism is 2,880 cubic units. So one thing here you want to keep in mind, these are going to be your really helpful formulas. Now here, since it's a right square prism, our base is really going to be side times side, and then we're just going to have the height because it's a square on the bottom. So what we're really looking at here is we're looking at 2,880 is equal to 6 squared times our height. So we're doing 2,880 equals 36h. So we can divide both sides by 36. And when we do so here, that will give us our correct answer of 80 here. All right. The scatter plot shows the relationship between two variables x and y. An equation for the exponential model shown can be written as y equals ab to the x, where a and b are positive constants. Which of the following is closest to the value of b? Well, this goes back to our exponential growth stuff we just talked through, but if you're seeing decay, b is always less than 1 and greater than 0. And we're seeing decay here. It's going down. The only one that's showing decay is going to be b. Each of these other ones are showing exponential growth, so it just has to be a here. If we wanted to kind of solve for this, we would pick starting point, a point after 1, and 1 to 2, and solve for the percent decrease, but we don't need to do that here because only one's showing decay. What is the cosine of x? This almost looks suspiciously easy. Well, this is our adjacent adjacent over hypotenuse. This is our hypotenuse, so it's simply going to be 11 over 28 is our correct answer. What is a positive solution to the given equation here? So remember, with your quadratics, you're setting each of these equal to 0. So this will give you a solution of -2. This will give you a solution of +5, and this will give you a solution of -9. So 5 is going to be our correct answer. Once again, though, let's say we're blanking on this, we're feeling a little stressed during the test or unsure. There's absolutely nothing wrong with going through, just saying, okay, as long as we're good on time, let me go through and let me graph this. And once you do, remember your solutions here are going to be showing your x-intercepts. So there's our +5, -2, -9. Gives you kind of a little bit of peace of mind that we've done it correctly. All right. Oh, this is funny. I actually, when I took the March paper-based test last year, I think in my experimental section, I got this absolutely identical question here. So I think the numbers even are pretty much the exact same here. So let me diagram this out before we talk through this here though. W, Y, A. So we know Y, Z, and I just want to make sure I'm not remembering a different question than this one. In the figure shown, Y, Z, and X, Y intersect at point Q. And this is going to be Z down here. YQ equals 63. WQ equals 70. WX equals 60. And XQ equals 120. What is the length of YZ? Now, this is going to be a similar triangle question because these angles are going to be the same. So just for kind of sake of hopefully this making more sense, I'm going to define these as angle B, and I'm going to define these as angle C. Now, the really tricky part for questions like this, and where a lot of students are going to mess them up, is when we're dealing with a question like this, if we're doing similar sides, we have to be using sides that are opposite the same angles here. So our ratio here, what I'm looking at is the only side length I'm given in these, and these are going to be similar triangles here because all of our angle measures are going to be the same. What I'm looking at here is the only side length that's being shared, which is going to set up my kind of proportion of similarity, is the 70 and 63. So what I know is if I'm looking here for YZ, I'm looking for, right, we'll just put this as, we'll just label this as YZ. We'll solve for YZ. We're saying is 70 is to 63, is 70 is to 63, 60 opposite of B is going to be equivalent to YZ here. So from here we could just cross multiply through. This should just be a ratio of 10 to 9 though as well. So this should be 54 here. So with this one here, we can just cross multiply to be safe. So we'll end up with 70 YZ equals 60 times 63. And then we can divide both sides by 70. We'll see if my mental math was correct. Yep, there's our 54 is our correct answer. But this is a really good question to kind of learn from for how they can make these a little trickier. A lot of times students start setting up the wrong sides and then you end up getting a wrong answer even though you feel like you've solved the question correctly. If you've been learning a lot in the video so far and you want to learn everything that you need to know to get a perfect score on the digital SAT from me, check out the free trial to my Ultimate SAT course. It's going to give you a few hours of free content, and we're going to teach you some of the most important foundational grammar rules, and we're going to cover a math concept that shows up on every single SAT. It's also going to give you a feel for how the full Ultimate SAT course is going to work, which I think is by far the best online resource out there for helping students get really high scores on the SAT. It's also backed by a 100-point score improvement guarantee, so go ahead and check out that free trial now or at the end of the video. All right, the function g is defined by g of x equals x plus 14 times t minus x, where t is a constant. In the xy plane, the graph of y equals g of x passes through the point 24, 0. What is the value of g of 0? Okay, let me reread that again. G of x equals, so I'm just going to start writing this out. So g of x equals x plus 14 times t minus x, where t is a constant. In the xy plane, the graph of y equals g of x passes through the point 24, 0. Okay, so we're just going to be plugging in here. So remember, this is no different than our y value here. So we're plugging in 0 equals 24 plus 14 times t minus 24. So what I can notice here is, right, we're going to get 0 equals, not 48, 0 equals 38 times t minus 24. But anything times 0 is going to equal 0. So if I'm really doing this, I could also just set this t minus 24, if we're doing it the real math teacher way, is equal to 0. So that's going to give us that t equals 24. So now we know our whole function. So now we know our function is g of x equals x plus 14 times 24 minus x. And we're now just looking for g of 0. Most of these, just to be safe, I always recommend just pop it into Desmos. There's no chance you're going to make a silly math mistake if you do so. So we'll go over to Desmos. Now we're going to write out our whole function. X plus 14 times 24 minus x. We're looking for g of 0, so we can just do g of 0. It's going to spit out the correct answer for us. So it just makes it really easy. It's often faster than popping this stuff in your calculator, opening the door to making mistakes. So long as we've entered this in properly, x plus 14, 24 minus x, we know that's going to be our correct answer there. All right. Looks like percent increase decrease here. The population of zebras in a population in 2018 was 1.27 times the population of zebras in this population in 2014. So we'll say that 2018 is equal to y, and we'll say 2014 is equal to x. So we as we express this out here. So 2018 was 1.27 times the number of zebras in 2014. So that means y is equal to 1.27x. If the number of zebras in this population in 2014 is p% of the number of zebras in 2018, what is the value of p to the nearest whole number? So what we're now doing is we're going to be dividing by 1.27. So we'll have y over 1.27 is equal to x. So as we do this, this is really the same as 1y. So 1 divided by 1.27, enter that in wrong, is going to give us 0.7874y is equal to x. Is p% of the number of zebras, what is the value of p to the nearest whole number? So this would be, this is where I have to be really careful with entering these in. This would be the same as 78.74% of y is equal to x. Now it says to the nearest value whole number of p. So that's going to give us 79 is our correct answer here. So definitely a little bit of a tricky one, because anytime we get these numbers that look a little funky, can give you a little anxiety on test day. Now the other thing you could do with this is you could just pick your own numbers. So if 2018 was 1.27 times the number of zebras in 2014, I could just say, well, let's say there were 100 in 2014. That means 127 in basically 2018. And if we did 100 divided by 127, we're going to get that exact same 0.7874. And to kind of really just break this down even a little bit more, if If you want to take these decimals and express them in percent form, you're multiplying by 100, and that will give us our 78.74. Then we just need to round that up to 79. But definitely a little bit of a tricky question. There's a lot of percent increase decrease questions that give students a lot of trouble. That's why my kind of math book, I have an entire huge portion of the percent chapter, basically half a chapter, is just exclusively dedicated to those. All right, circle question here. So circle A, looks like we're dealing with some sort of transformation here. Circle A is defined by the equation x plus 2 squared plus y squared equals 9. So circle B is the result of shifting circle A down 6 units and increasing the radius. So the radius of B is 2 times the radius of A. So anytime we deal with these transformations, once again, anybody who has my book should be nailing these, the entire section of the circles chapter on approaching these. But first step we want to take is we want to go through and identify where our center of the circle is and what our radius is. So this center is located at -2, 0, and our radius is equal to the square root of this, because our circle formula is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared. So when you see this positive, it's at -2. So now if we're moving this down 6 units, that means my new center is going to be at -8, 0. Down 6 units, excuse me. That means we're going to be at -2, -6, before I make a really bad mistake there. Circle B is shifting down 6 units and increasing the radius, so the radius of circle B is 2 times the radius of circle A. So that means our new radius is equal to 6. So what I would like to see here then is our circle is still centered at -2, but now it's also at -6. So I should see x plus 2 squared plus y plus 6 squared is equal to 36. Whichever equation is equivalent to that is going to be correct. So x plus 2 squared plus y plus 6 squared is equal to 4 times 9. That's equal to 36. They're just really kind of messing with you by putting all these different values in here. These we'd have to divide out the 2. So that would give us 9/2. That's not going to be correct. This one here would be shifting it up 6 units. Same issue with D there. All right, nothing too bad in that first module. So we'll see how the second one is. So I'm going to kind of zoom a little bit faster and just make sure I don't create myself a timing issue like I did at the end of the second reading and writing one, where I had a camera cut out on me. A manager is responsible for ordering supplies for a shaved ice shop. The shop's inventory starts with 4,500 paper cups, and the manager estimates that 70 of these paper cups are used each day. Based on this estimate, in how many days will the supply of paper cups reach 1,700? So I can actually use Desmos again. So what we need to understand, this is a linear function. We're saying we're starting at 4,500, and we're using 70 each day minus 70x. Now I want to figure out how many days it's going to reach 1,700. So one thing I could do, it's probably going to be 40, because 4,800 minus 2,800. So one thing you could do is you could just play a game of guess and check with these. F of 40 equals 1,700, so that's going to be correct. But we could also go through and we could do y equals 1,700, and we're now just going to look for that intersection point. So we're going to have to zoom out quite a bit here, but when we go in, we should see 40, 1,700. That's a way we can just use Desmos to kind of solve through these. In triangle RST, the measure of R is 63. Which of the following could be the measure in degrees of angle S? Well, if we're looking at this, so we know there's 180 degrees in a triangle, so 180 minus 63 is going to give us 117. We need to be able to split the 117 up into 2 separate angles. All these other ones are greater than 117, so it has to be 116. That means we're going to have 63, 116, and 1, but that's our correct answer there. All right, we're actually going to go back to Desmos, because these we can plug and chug, but we can also kind of do these this nice, quick, sneaky way here. So we're looking for which one is going to be correct here with our solutions. So first thing I would do is I would just graph this. 4x plus 8, we absolutely can plug and chug. So we're going to go way back down here so we can see these. So what we're going to see here, so every single answer choice has 2. So I want to just see when x equals 2, where I'm hitting this inequality. So if stuff's a solution, it's in the shaded portion. That means if an answer choice doesn't have a given value of y, where x is 2, that's greater than 16, that's not going to work. So A works, B doesn't work, C doesn't work, D doesn't work. I'm done with the question. I can move on. I could check this with the other ones. 4, 24, 30 works, and 6, 32, 41 works. So, but once you eliminate those 3, we can really just cruise on. The function f is defined by f of x equals 9/7 x plus 8/7. For what value of x does f of x equals 5? We're going to do the exact same function thing we did on that first question here. We can do this, but especially with fraction work, we're opening the door to making a silly mistake and giving away a question that, since this is going to be classified as like a medium difficulty question, we're going to get dinged more heavily for missing this. So we're looking for the value of x when f of x equals 5. So we're just going to do y equals 5. We're going to find our intersection point. X is 3. Gets us in and out of this question really easily. No chances of us making mistakes, as long as we have put this in properly. So I always like to do a little double check just to make sure I've graphed this properly, but it gets me in and out of the question. During a portion of flight, a small airplane's cruising speed varied between 150 miles per hour and 170 miles per hour. Which inequality best represents the situation where s is the cruising speed in miles per hour during this portion of the flight? Well, it has to be greater than 150 and less than 170, so it's going to have to be D here. The graph models the number of active projects the company was working on X months after the end of 2012, where 0 is less than or equal to X is less than or equal to 6. If this throws you off, you can pretty much always ignore this. This is just saying for this given domain of the graph. According to the model, what is the predicted number of active projects the company was working on at the end of November 2012? So it's X months after the end of November 2012. So at the end of November 2012, X is equal to 0. So we're just taking our y-intercept, which is going to be 5. With these, be really careful with how they're defining it. They've done a lot of like end of month stuff, and people end up like picking one spot over, making a silly mistake, but just read those carefully. We're going to go back and we're going to use our Desmos line trick here. So in the linear function h of 28 equals 15, h of 26 equals 22. Well, this is no different than x and y values. So this is no different. We're going to hit up our little table. We're going to do 28 and 15, our x and y values. And we're going to do 26 and 22, x and y values. Now we're going to use our little regression tool, y1 tilde m x1 plus b. So that's going to give us our slope is negative 3.5, which is the same as negative 7/2, and our y-intercept is 113. So D is going to be our correct answer. As long as, once again, we've entered these in correctly, 28x, 15y, 26x, 22y. We're not going to open the door to making a bunch of mistakes, and especially with all the fractions there, it's easy to mess up. The table shows the linear relationship between the number of cars C on a commuter train and the maximum number of passengers and crew that the train can carry. Which equation represents the linear relationship between C and P? Okay, so since this is in standard form, it's honestly easiest just to play a game of guess and check with this. So we'll just start by checking A here. So what we know is if this works, left-hand side equals right-hand side. If it works for A, I'm going to at least check 2 points. If you want to be really safe, you can check all 3. So 55 times 3 minus 174, that's our passengers and crew, has to equal negative 9. So as we go to this, 55 times 3 is going to give us 165, 165 minus 174, that should equal negative 9. That does. So this passes the first test. Now let's go back and let's just plug in those next pair of points here. We'll just see if it keeps working. So 55 times 5 minus 284. This is nice of them that they put it as A. If this does end up working out, 55 times 5 equals 275 minus 284 equals -9. At this point, I'd be 99% confident this is correct. But let's be careful since it's the second module. 55 times 10 is going to be 550 minus 559 equals -9. That's our correct answer. All right, quadratic factoring question here. Which of the following is a solution to the given equation here? Now, w squared plus 12w minus 40 equals 0 is no different than x squared minus 12x minus 40 equals 0. Now, we could graph these and play a big game of guess and check with the answer choices to see which one is correct, but they give these in the free response portion, so, and they'll ask you for like a k value underneath the root and other stuff like that. So let's go through and do this correctly. So we're going to use the quadratic formula. So negative b, this is going to become positive 12, plus or minus the square root of b squared. So negative 12 squared is going to give us 144. Minus 4ac, so minus 4 times 1 times negative 40. So this is going to end up being plus 160 all over 2. So this is going to be the same as 12 plus or minus the square root of 304. At this point, I'm going to start being really careful to make sure I'm not making any silly mistakes here. All over 2. And now this is the fun part. We get to do our root tree with this. Now, anytime we're trying to do the root tree, I start dividing by 4, 9, 16, 25. Because those I can all, 16 square root of that is 4, so I get a pair of 4s. So we'll start with 16 since this is an even number. So when I do that, I get this is the same as 16 and 19, which means this is the same as 4 and 4 and 19. So this is the same as 4 root 19. So now we can go ahead and simplify this down, because once we've pulled out of the square root, now we can clear out that 2 in the denominator. So now we're going to divide the 4 and the 12 by 2. This is going to give us 6 plus or minus 2 root 19. So let's see if we have an answer here. Oh, I made a mistake here. That was almost really bad. So this is going to be negative 12. I'm glad I looked back up at that. So the b squared is not going to be affected here. So the 144 is not going to be affected. All this other stuff is not going to be affected. It's just going to be this part. So this is going to be negative 6. That would have, I 1000% would have missed that if I didn't look back at the original equation. So negative b, negative 12 plus or minus the square root of b squared, 144. Yes. Okay. So D is our correct answer here. But be really, really careful with these. That would have been a bad mistake there. What is the y coordinate of the y-intercept? That definitely would have cost me getting a 1600, because that's far too easy of a question to miss. Probably would have knocked me down to 1570 or 1580 if I haven't missed anything else on the test. What is the y coordinate of the y-intercept of this graph? So we find our y-intercept when x equals 0. So I can just plug in 0 for x. So 3 times 0 over 7 equals negative 5y. Got to be a little more careful here as I'm going through to make sure I don't make any mistakes. So this is just going to be 0 equals negative 5y over 9 plus 21. Now I'm a little paranoid. So this is going to give me 5y over 9 equals 21. So now I can just go ahead and cross multiply. So I'll get 5y equals 21 times 9 is 189 divided by 5. That's going to give us that y equals 37.8. A little bit of a funky number here again. So now after going through that last one, just going to double check my work. 5y over 9. Yeah, that's going to be our correct answer there. All right. I have to probably pick up the pace, make sure I have time for those last tricky ones here. So I'm going to probably talk through these a little less. What is the system of linear equations is represented by the lines shown? I could graph all of these and check them. For sake of time, I'm going to see if I can cut any corners. So these are both going to have a negative slope, and I need to have an x-intercept of 8. So when I plug in 0 for y, well, negative 64 over negative 10 does not give us 8. This one would give us 8. That's not going to give us 8 again for our x-intercept. 8, 8, 8, 8 will work. 8, 8, 8, 8 will work. Okay, I'm just going to go through and graph the last two here. Will be easier because the y-intercepts I don't see a super particular value. So let's do 4x minus 10y equals 32. And, oh, that's not going to be a negative slope. Okay, so it's going to have to be d here, but I'll go through and graph it just to show. Plus 10y equals 32, and negative 8x minus 10y equals negative 64, and 4x plus 10y, oh, there we go, 64. I was like, that does not look correct. Okay, so there's our intercepts there. We have 1 just above 3, 1 right in the middle of 6, so that gives me confirmation there. All right. Solution to system of equations is x, y. What is the value of 6? 6 times x minus 2. Well, if I add these equations together, I'm going to cancel out all of my y plus 7. So when I do so, I'm going to be left with 2x minus 2 equals 117 plus 442 equals 559. Well, if I'm looking for 6x minus 2, I can just multiply this whole equation by 3. So that's going to give me 6x minus 2 is going to be equal to 559 times 3, which is going to give us 1,677. Minimum value of the function, just graph this. No reason to do anything else. We can use our negative b over 2a and all of that stuff, but really no reason to. X squared minus 48x plus 2304. Zoom on out. It's going to be way up here. There we go. Should get that point of interest. So it's 1,728. Yeah, minimum value. We're not looking for what value of x do we get the minimum. 1,728. All right. How many solutions does this have? If we have different slopes, you're always going to get one solution. You could graph these as y equals, but for sake of time, I'm going to move through. Function g is defined by g of x equals x times x minus 2 times x plus 6 squared. The value of g of 7 minus w equals 0, where w is a constant. What is the sum of all possible values of w? Well, we're plugging this in for x, the 7 minus w, this in for y, so for the g of x. So I'm going to rewrite this expression as 0 equals 7 minus w for that first x there, times 7 minus w minus 2 times 7 minus w plus 6 squared. So this will give us that 0 equals 7 minus w. 7 minus w minus 2 is the same as 5 minus w. Struggling with my w's here. 7 minus w plus 6 here is going to give us 7 minus w minus 2, yeah, okay, is going to give us 13 minus w squared. So each of these is going to give us a solution. When we've set each of these equal to 0, the square doesn't matter. That just means there's two 13 minus w's. So we're just going to do 7 minus w equals 0, 5 minus w equals 0, and 13 minus w equals 0. So this will give us that 7 equals w. This will give us that 5 equals w. And this will give us that 13 equals w. So the sum of all of those, 13 plus 5 plus 7, is going to go ahead and give us our correct answer here of 25. All right. A grove has 6 rows of birch trees and 5 rows of maple trees. Each row of birch trees has 8 trees 20 feet or taller and 6 trees shorter than 20 feet. Each row of maple trees has 9 trees 20 feet or taller and 7 trees shorter than 20 feet. A tree from one of these rows will be selected at random. What is the probability of selecting a maple tree given the tree is 20 feet or taller? All right, they finally put one of these on the Bluebook test. So I've heard from quite a few students, they've been introducing conditional probability word problems. So I put some of these in my book once again, but this is the first time I've actually been able to see one of these and not just have it described to me by a student. So we'll go back through this here. So a grove has 6 rows of birch trees. Each row of birch trees has 8 20 feet or taller and 6 20 that are shorter than 20 feet. So we're going to have 48 B that are 20 plus and 6 rows. So we're going to have 36 birch trees that are basically below 20 feet. Now, each row of maple trees has 9 trees 20 feet or taller. So we have 9 rows of maple. So we're going to get 45 that are 20 plus, and we have 7 trees shorter than 20 feet. So we're going to have 35 maple that are basically below 20. That's all I'm just kind of expressing here in shorthand. A tree from one of these rows will be selected at random. What is the probability of selecting a maple tree given, this is our conditional portion, given that tree is 20 feet or taller? So given the tree is 20 feet or taller means we're just looking at this, and we're looking for the probability of selecting maple. So this is going to be 45 over 93. So we're looking for which answer is the same as that. 15 over 31. That's going to be our correct answer there. A rectangle is inscribed in a circle such that the vertex of the rectangle lies on the circumference of the circle. So let's draw this out here. That each vertex of the rectangle lies on the circumference of the circle. The diagonal of the rectangle is twice the length of the shortest side of the rectangle. This is going to be a 30, 60, 90 triangle because I see that and the root 3. What is the length in units of the diameter? So anytime you see root 3s and root 2s, that's a little bit of a heads up that we're pretty much guaranteed to be looking at some sort of 30, 60, 90. So I don't draw this as a perfect triangle, but basically what we have here is this is 1089 root 3, and the diagonal is twice the length of the shortest side of the rectangle. So, oops, I wanted to pull up the reference table. So here's our 30, 60, 90, x, 2x, x root 3 here. The area of the rectangle is 1890 root 3. What is the length in units? So that's going to be x root 3, and this is going to be 2x. Well, we know our area is equal to length times width. So therefore, what we know is 1089 root 3 is equal to x times our x root 3, which means 1089 root 3 is equal to x squared root 3. So we can cancel out those root 3's. So we'll go ahead and take the square root of 1089. So that's going to give us that x is equal to 33. What is the length in units of the diameter of the circle? So that means this is going to be 33. That means our diameter going all the way across is going to be 66. Just going to make sure I read through this all properly. Vertex, diagonal is twice the length of the shortest side. The area is that. What is the length in units of the diameter of the circle? Yes. All right, more percentages here. A positive number A is 2,241% of the sum of B and C. So if I want to put these in multiples, I can always divide these percents by 100. So this should be 22.41 times. So that's going to tell us that A equals 22.41 times the sum of B and C times B plus C. And B is 83% of C. So we also know B equals 0.83 C. What percent of B is A? So I want to get the C out of here. So I could do this is C equals B over 0.83. So that's going to give us that A equals 22.41 times B plus B over 0.83. So I'm going to have to keep this all in the calculator. This is the same as like 1B over 0.83. So 1 divided by 0.83. It's going to give us 1.20481. So plus 1, it's going to give us 2.2048119, all this stuff. I want to keep this all in the calculator. So I'm going to multiply that by 22.41. So that's going to give us that A equals 49.41B. So here, since we're saying what percent of B is A, well, this means A is 49.41 times B, but we have to take this the same way here. We divided by 100 to put it in the multiple form. We're going to have to do 49.41 times 100 to put it back in percent form. So we're going to multiply this by 100. That's going to give us 4,941%. So that will give us our correct answer of D. That's a tricky question. Another one of these here. So I'm very happy I put an entire chapter dedicated to these because they keep just hammering away at these questions. So it's what I call special system of equations here, where you're dealing with no, infinite, or one solution. So if we have no solution here, I'm going to have to go, we still have a few questions. Let me see how hard these look. Ooh. Okay, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but I'm going to put this in ax plus by equals c form. So the top one, I can do -5/8x plus 14 over 8y equals 4 over 7. And the bottom one here, I can put in 5/4 x minus py equals 22 over 4. Stuff has the no solution if it has the same slope but a different y-intercept. And that means if stuff is in ax plus by equals c form, the ratio of a to b in both equations is equivalent. So I can do -5 over 8 over 14 over 8 is equal to 5 over 4 over p. So over negative p, excuse me. So at this point, I'm going to cancel out my negatives, and also these both have a denominator of 8. So I can re-express this as 5 over 14 equals 5 over 4 over p. So I can cross multiply the p. So I'm going to get p times 5 over 14 equals 5 over 4. So now I can divide by 5 over 14. That's going to give me that p equals 5/4. We're dividing by a fraction, so multiplying by the reciprocal. That's not going to give me a 5 there. So I'm thinking and writing at the same time. So this is going to give me that p equals 70 over 20, which is the same as 7 over 2, or 3.5. So I'll just put in 7 over 2. All right. The table shows 3 values of x and their corresponding values of g of x, where g of x equals f of x over x plus 3, and f is a linear function. What is the y-intercept of y equals f of x in the xy plane? 3 corresponding values of these, g of x, f of x, y-intercept. Okay. So input for x, this is our output. So I can rewrite this as using this first point. I'm going to need 2 points to solve for the equation of the line. So 3 goes in for g of x is equal to f of -27 over, we're plugging in that x value, over -27 plus 3. So that's going to give us -24 on our denominator. So that's going to give us -72 equals f of -27. So I need to do this with another point. So we'll do 0 equals f of -9 over -9 plus 3 is going to give us 6, but we're going to get 0 equals f of -9. So I'm actually going to go back and I'm going to use my table trick to do this super fast. So table, we have the points of -27, that's our x value here, -72 is our y value, and -9 is our x value, 0 is our y value. So y1 tilde m x1 plus b, we're looking for our y-intercept here. So b is 36, all right. If you've been learning a lot in the video so far and you want to learn everything that you need to know to get a perfect score on the digital SAT from me, check out the free trial to my Ultimate SAT course. It's going to give you a few hours of free content, and we're going to teach you some of the most important foundational grammar rules, and we're going to cover a math concept that shows up on every single SAT. It's also going to give you a feel for how the full Ultimate SAT course is going to work, which I think is by far the best online resource out there for helping students get really high scores on the SAT. It's also backed by a 100-point score improvement guarantee, so go ahead and check out that free trial now or at the end of the video. So it should be okay on time for these last two. All right, a circle has center G and points M and N lie on the circle. Line segments M, H, and NH are tangent to the circle, so perpendicular to the circle at points M and N respectively. If the radius of the circle is 168 millimeters and the perimeter of quadrilateral GMHN is 3,856 millimeters, what is the distance in millimeters between points G and H? Okay, I'm going to need to draw this out and read back through. This looks like one of the harder questions I've seen them release. So a circle has a center at G. Points M and N lie on the circle. Line segments MH and NH are, drag this down a bit so I have a bit more room. So we'll put this as the center of the circle. MH and NH are tangent to the circle at points M and N. Okay. If the radius of the circle is 160, I kind of get what's happening here. So it's a quadrilateral, so we're going to have some point kind of sitting up here that's creating points of tangency, where I'm not going to have drawn this perfectly, but it should like just be looking something like this, because it's just going to be like kissing the circle, so it really should be like going up somewhere like that, but it's just going to be going back through there. The radius of the circle is 168. We're tangent at the points. We'll just do M over here, N here, and that means we're going to have point H up here. So these are each going to be 168. The perimeter of GMHN is 3,856. So we could do X and X, and what we now know is 2X plus 2 times 168 is going to be equal to 3,856. So 168 times 2, 336. All right, so each of these are going to be 1,760. So now we're looking for the distance between G and H here. This is tricky. So as I said earlier, as I'm reading through, since these lines of tangency are always perpendicular to a circle, I didn't draw this out perfectly, and I want to make sure I have time to answer the last question, but you always form, since it's perpendicular, we form a right angle. So that means, and I know I didn't draw this perfectly, but I can do a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. This is the hypotenuse. So what I'm now going to do is 1,760 squared plus 168 squared is going to be equal to, well, we'll just classify it as x squared, but we're solving for the length of GH. So 1,760 my calculator's having a moment here. Okay. Plus 168 squared, and then we're taking the square root of that, and that's going to give us 1,768. So D is going to be our correct answer. really tricky question here. So let's see how brutal this last one is. I'm going to save myself time and not erase that stuff. The function f is defined by f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are constants. This is harder than the last one. This is going to be a super hard question. The graph of y equals f of x in the xy plane passes through the points 7, 0, and negative 3, 0. So that means I have factors of x minus 7 and x plus 3. We always remember our factors are opposite of our x-intercepts. If a is an integer greater than 1, which of the following could be the value of a plus b? So a is an integer greater than 1. So easiest thing I can think here is we can probably spot a pattern here. So x minus 7 times x plus 3 is going to give us x squared minus 4x minus 21. And now, right, if we have an a value here and it's greater than 1 and it's an integer, let's just see what happens when we put 2 in there. So we'd get 2x squared minus 8x minus 42. What could be the value of a plus b? Well, a plus b here would be 2 plus negative 8, which would equal negative 6. So that could work. So it should just be, that was actually shockingly easy. I'm sure we could do this in terms of a and b and using the vertex because it's the midpoint of these two, but that seemed completely unnecessary with them giving us the integer possibilities. Let's see if we did 3. Well, this would give us 3x squared minus 12x minus 63. So our a plus b value would be not negative 9 here. It just looks like it's going to be like a negative of multiple 3 of a multiple of 3 as we go up. But since it's greater than 1, it has to be, that's b would be your answer if we put in 1, once we understand these kind of factors. But once it's greater than 1, we're going to just see it would be negative 6, negative 9, negative 12. We should keep following that same pattern. So we'll wrap up and we'll see how I did here. I had to zoom through those last. I don't think I missed anything in math unless I made a silly mistake like the one I kind of caught. But for reading and writing, we'll see, because there were those 2 questions that I had to zoom through because my camera stopped recording and I let the time run off. So we'll see how it went. But I think I should have got both of those right. I don't think there was anything else that should have tripped me up there. Once again, let me just sign into this off the screen. But I really hope this video helped you out. If you guys learned a lot here and you're really looking to learn kind of all the content and lessons and everything that I teach around these concepts, once again, I haven't seen anything here that showed up. Well, that's interesting. The test I took yesterday and a bunch of other ones have disappeared from here. But let's see if I missed anything at all. If I was able to get a pure 1600. But if you guys are really looking to learn, yeah, I didn't miss anything here. So if you guys are really looking to learn all of the strategies, tips, tricks, and tips that help me kind of look at the test in this way and understand right versus wrong, I strongly recommend at least checking out the free trial to my Ultimate SAT course. Once again, I think, and I really at this point know, especially after scores coming out yesterday, I don't think there's another math book out there that compares to the one that I've put out. College Panda is missing a ton of these topics. It's also like 7-8 years old at this point, so you're at a huge disadvantage. But every single thing that I've seen on here are concepts, question types that I have plenty of in my book. So definitely check that out at the least if you're really looking to improve your math. But if you're really looking for a comprehensive course, which is going to give you the same experience as being tutored by me, but for a fraction of the price, definitely recommend checking out my Ultimate SAT course, or at the bare minimum, the free trial, where you're going to learn a lot of helpful tips and a few helpful concepts which can help you improve your score. If you have any questions at all, drop them in the comments below.